10 years since the cancellation of the expanded universe, and I thought that I would personally take this opportunity in this video to thank somebody who's responsible for the type of fan that I am and helping me realize my full potential and enjoyment as a fan, and that would be Matt Wilkins. But what you say? Arthur, didn't you just made a video condemning rage bait YouTubers, and Matt Wilkins is friends with Ryan Kinnell, who is a particularly extreme example of a rage bait YouTuber. And that would be a true statement if you said that, but your next conclusion would be, and you're supposed to hate Matt Wilkins, and that would not be true, right? Because I'm able to hold two conflicting emotions about something or someone in my head and not succumb to the angry emotion and then conclude that they need to go down, right? Because the reality is that Matt, over the past 10 years, and past few years that I've been watching him, but past 10 years more that he's been on YouTube championing the EU, has set the example for a small part of the fandom for how you can most enjoy the expanded universe, go beyond the main books and comics. And I found that once that path option was revealed to me and normalized through his enthusiasm, the enthusiasm of others like Chris Nelson or Scott Johnson, that it really helped me reach a higher level of enjoyment from the expanded universe, and I'm extremely thankful for that. Matt's super rad intro to Matt's expanded universe is where I first saw the adventure journals and the missions books. All right, I would have found those eventually, but that's where I first saw them. And so, I do not like Ryan Kinnell, like on principle. Maybe I could probably hang with him. Seems like I could. And does that, when I'm particularly salty about something, challenge my feelings for Matt? Yeah, like maybe a little bit. But somehow I think that Matt will be okay. I know that the opinion of a YouTuber like myself with 100 subscribers might be keeping him up at night. But I think that he'll get by. And I would encourage people not to succumb to your base level emotions and think rationally, right? As I can toward Matt, who I like and find very likable and whose content I'm grateful for and his contributions to the fandom. And speaking of Matt, he just did, in very Matt style, a hilarious, though blunt, but that's him, wouldn't have him any other way, video about drama in the fandom over the past 10 years, when there was the one bit about supernatural encounters where he's calling out supernatural encounters haters, or people challenging its canon status. And I'm not going to go into the weeds on its status as a canon book. That's exhausting. But I did want to try to say a couple things that I thought sounded okay in my head as it pertains to us and how we regard supernatural encounters as part of the continuity. And right up front, I would say, is it canon? It's quasi-canon, right? And barely so. Probably is the brutal reality of supernatural encounters status as a part of the EU continuity. Barely quasi-canon, according to bigger parts of the fandom's rather strict rules of what they'll accept into the canon. I think that supernatural encounters, if I go back and analyze kind of the past few years and its touting as a piece of the canon, is just victim of circumstance. And in that we're riding off the high of parts of the fandom with Heart of the Jedi, which was regarded as quasi-canon. And I think that supernatural encounters from the fandom and Joe and the editors, I don't know if Joe specifically, perhaps the editors with that one trailer we got before Supernatural Encounters came out, touting as the final expanded universe book. They all, with good intent, leaned into Supernatural Encounters being canon or quasi-canon, and then the two got conflated, right? We all always understood it to be quasi-canon, but just called it canon because we wanted it to be, because we willed it to be, right? So this may be not emotionally honest on our part. And the leaning into that was not for fans or prospective fans, because I've been touting it before I've even read it, and have only read part of it, and still tout it, prospective fans. The leaning into that was not, there's nothing malicious or conniving about that on the parts of the editors, on the parts of the fans. It was in good intentions, right? I suspect, no one said anything to me from the editor team, that they leaned into it being the final canon book and it being a new piece of canon because we all wanted it to be, right? And they're giving us what we wanted. And what happens from there is its status as a piece of the canon is called into question, and rightly so, but the discourse immediately or eventually got really nasty. And I think people like in my friend group probably went a little too hard defending it as canon, but I think that their extreme reaction in defending it as canon probably, and I didn't see all the discourse on this, but what I'm about to explain makes sense to me, so I submit it for consideration. The hard line drawn in the sand that it is canon from our side, and whatever evidence was supposed to be revealed, it comes not from knowing that it's canon and it just staunchly disagreeing. It's a reaction to the other side's disgust for us. And as Matt said in his drama video, what is clearly a reaction to, I've got tinnitus. What is clearly a reaction to the other side, or the people opposing the continuity, seeing people having a good time and wanting to tear it down, right? How nasty. And I think that you've been heard. We don't really want anything to do with some of you nastier people. So it's not going to be like a coming to the table and like a compromising and being like, hey, like Supernatural Encounters is not very clearly canon and is perhaps hardly so. Though I would again submit its status as quasi-canon that we have decided to define what quasi-canon is enough for us to celebrate. But, you've been heard. I think that if you take a look around, and if you look at the discourse on Supernatural Encounters, you will see that I've seen how it's regarded in its continuity as a piece of continuity has changed a bit. I saw the argument that it has not gone through editorial in any way. And so, of course, it can't be taken as canon, and the bold decisions made that have big continuity implications can't be taken as canon, and that's a good argument, right? I still choose to make it my canon. That argument was very clearly a good argument to me from the beginning, and I think that people who didn't like that argument that I'm friends with are coming around to it as well, because they're not as triggered by you or the argument, because they love Supernatural Encounters and they don't care that it's not very clearly canon. It's now their canon. And I would just also, as an aside, say, take a minute to reflect on your discourse with us over the past year or so, and what amounts to essentially disagreeing with somebody, getting really angry, with the facade of ball breaking, and deciding that they're going down. What's going on with you that you need to hound to the ends of the earth young 20-year-olds and kids, young men, given how old you might be, some of you? Kind of weird optics, and you do hound us and them to the ends of the earth. I suspect just from making this video, I may see some of you in comment sections on social medias of mine for the rest of my life. That's really something. That is really something. That's okay though. We're online. And so I guess it's like not illegal, right? I'm in a public space. Bad taste though. Says a lot about you though. And so I guess I would just transition a little bit and say I finally started reading Supernatural Encounters. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. The parts with the council are engaging, and then the parts we get with Q9 and Hex are charming. And then book 3, where we go into the creation of the Star Wars universe, and we're following the architects, is super interesting. And Supernatural Encounters is giving me a feeling that I've actually never gotten from a book before, and I wonder, Alex, if you can relate to this. Maybe you have gotten this from other books, but there's a feeling as a prior gamer that I've gotten playing video games where it's just like sunk its teeth into me. And I'm at work and I'm like, I gotta get back to that game and get back into that world. And I've never, ever, not with one book, gotten that from a book before. And yet I got that from this book. Just calling to me. Just because I want to get back in and dig in. Which is a shame because I've got to pause now after the end of book 3 and that excellent interlude. Some about right there. I got the last 2 Fate of the Jedi books, Ascension and Apocalypse, and Plagueis because I saved it for last, and Crucible and Lost Tribes. That's it. Read the entire EU besides that, except for the RPG material. I always say that. Because there's some serious people out there that know their lore. But we talk about cancellation, and we talk about how there's no more EU left, and where do I go from here, right? Because the structure of reading the EU has been so good for me, and I know a lot of you are out there are much more functioning adults than me, and you don't need the structure of books. And so good for you. It's good for me though. And so I'm thinking about like where I'm going to go, because the Disney canon, 1, is not quite good enough to sustain me in that way, and 2, not enough comes out for me to have enough to read over the years coming. And so I look to Supernatural Encounters and appreciate it in another way, which is that it's shown me a whole new area of books to read. Many of which I've thrown into my reading, not even saved it for finishing the EU. And that's one thing that Joe has done, is he has expanded my horizons, right? And I know a lot of you, again, you're much smarter and more independent than me, and you're not so stupid that you need somebody else to kind of introduce books to you, and you can go and find them on your own, and that's cool. You're so much smarter than me. It was nice to get a gentle nudge or recommendation for something like the Willow sequel trilogy, dense and amazing. Something fun like the Seventh Tower series, Lucasfilm, right? this third book, Anur, I think I said that right, it's such a fun book. It's probably my favorite out of the 6 books. And it was, I just got to the bit in Supernatural Encounters where, spoiler, Cold Dandelion creates the sort of pocket dimension. And that is just so crazy cool to have this non-Star Wars thing incorporated in there in a way that doesn't interfere. It's absolutely amazing. And to whatever extent George Lucas had his hands in these things, right, and they're a part of his grand universe, it's still awesome that they're all worked together into Supernatural Encounters. And I see this and I want to read it because it's such a good example of George Lucas. The best and worst of him is a quote on here on the back of it. George Lucas talking about the Seventh Tower book series, and I bet that this is literally all he had to do with the creative aspect of this book series. He says, "I hope that the adventure that unfolds in the Seventh Tower will take readers on a new journey of the mind." Thank you, George. I feel as though you might not even know what happened in these books. It's still wonderful for them to be included. And then, you know, because you're way smarter than me, and I'm a dum-dum, Supernatural Encounters has almost been taken as a way to teach me more about literature, not what would be commonly referred to as high quality, famous, masterful literature, but weird fiction, right? And so I've taken the opportunity to read Clark Ashton Smith, whose weird fiction lore is not incorporated into part of the Star Wars continuity, right? But whose writing style and the feel Joe is very clearly inspired by. And there are some nods to stuff from Clark Ashton Smith's writing, but reading these absolutely enhances reading Supernatural Encounters. It's not required, but I would personally recommend it. And I think you could probably read it after as well and still get the overall rewarding feeling. I've shown a lot of these before. Something that is not Joe including into Supernatural Encounters Cthulhu mythos, but something that was already there, barely there, sure, right? Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And a lot of people take issue with taking something that's just a background shot of a xenomorph or a shot in a comic book of Splinter of the Mind's Eye of something that looks like Cthulhu. And so Joe takes that as creative license to incorporate the whole Cthulhu mythos into Star Wars. And kind of my personal feelings on that are, where's the fun in not doing that? It's so much more fun to incorporate all these things. And again, reading book 3 of Supernatural Encounters, the weird fiction entities, they fit right in for the tone of this book. Because with this, it's not a normal novel. With this, we see Joe doing what he does best, right? He has his strengths, and he's done the absolute best of his ability with the opportunity given to him by the fandom. Our smaller piece of the fandom, right, is something that I try to kind of preempt criticism to whatever extent I'm conscious of it about our little corner, the YouTube fandom, and people who are really super into Supernatural Encounters and what it means for the continuity, which is that I try to be honest, there's big swaths of the expanded universe fandom that don't even know about Supernatural Encounters or have disregarded it, and so it's like we're a smaller piece of the fandom. Sure, we're still excited about Supernatural Encounters. We'd still love to tell you why it's so cool. Why, even before reading it, I was pumped about it on principle because of what it does and how much it respects the continuity. And just to grab the rest of the books behind me, The Silmarillion. Reading The Silmarillion was absolutely wonderful. I think that's called Ainulindale, right? My favorite part of the Silmarillion, one of them. The very beginning, the creation, when the world is sung into existence, and we get a very, very similar sequence right in the beginning of Book 3 for supernatural encounters, and it is beautiful. I'm overjoyed at having something like that for Star Wars, even though it's not as good as written as the Silmarillion, right? And I told Joe that, and yeah, guess what? He's fine with it. That man takes stuff in stride. I don't think he ever thought that it was a masterpiece. I think he was leaning into partially what he thought the fandom wanted, giving us what we wanted. I think when Matt Wilkins, and I do mean I don't know if this is how the creative process went down, but I think when Matt Wilkins read one of the drafts and said it's like the Silmarillion of Star Wars, they took that to heart and decided to lean into it. I think that Kyle said on a stream somewhere, maybe that they did somewhat have that as a focus, like maybe we should lean into that aspect of a little bit of it for part of the book at least. And supernatural encounters. If you're in Joe's Discord, you can add him and ask him questions about it, and he's not going to spoil everything or fully explain everything, as most authors won't. But the love that he put into this, and the production value of the book, and all of the effort from the editors, these things cost money. The foiling. What a privilege it is to be able to read something so substantive and so beautiful and so meaningful to the continuity that I love, and be able to talk to the editors and the author. And if you're a kind, respectful human being that can function in normal society, you're invited to the party, right? This is just a beautiful book. The artwork, I'll be rambling at this point, but it just makes me think of how, this is compared to fan fiction, and yeah, sure, it's fan fiction to an extent, by your definitions of fan fiction, but how disingenuous and simplifying of a thing to say that is, to call this fan fiction something of this quality. The difficulty and the finances at stake to produce a book of this size with this art, and very clear, I've not been told something any specific. There's no way Joe didn't lose money on this book. And he did it to fulfill his obligation to the fandom. Long story short, I love it so far. If you want to have a good time, come and join us and talk to us about it. It doesn't have to be your canon. It can be partially your canon. It can just be a separate thing. That's all kind of irrelevant to me. Thank you.